So welcome to my lab. Well, this is the physical side of it. We're not going to spend too much time here, but I'll just give you a quick overview of how all this is connected. We have some Xen servers down here. We have the FreeNAS as storage via ISCSI. Got a whole video on how we set that up and how you can configure it. So Xen Server, ISCSI, FreeNAS, that's the storage for all of this. pfsense runs at the heart of our network. And then up here, a couple dumb switches and one managed UniFi switch. Now I know I could use more managed switches, and someone always points out, but you could do this and these aren't that expensive. I know, this is a basic setup and it works for us. We put high-end stuff at the clients, but I don't always need super high-end here. So to give you a quick idea how it works though, in the physical layer here is my computer happens to be on port 1. They wired my office first, you know, because my guys like me, I guess. I don't know. I was probably complaining about it. So mine became port 1, and these are some of the other ones in the office. This is our bottom dumb switch, and it's fed by one port of the UniFi switch here. So the pfsense comes into the UniFi switch because I need all the VLAN support for my lab. Then we have a dumb switch here is one network, and a dumb switch here is another network. This is fed direct, the dumb network here is fed directly by pfsense. It's a physically separate network, not even VLAN. So the UniFi distributes the VLANs and connects directly to the Xen servers. So the Xen servers are here, UniFi switch here, just an 8-port switch. I wish they had rack mount, they don't, that's why it's up here. The smallest rack mount they have, I think, is their 24. And I really like the UniFi product line. Now these couple switches over here, these go to the studio. And the studio is where I do my lab testing. And so I have a couple VLANs over here that go to there. And we're going to talk about how the software works in a second. But this is that physical layer part, just so you kind of see how it's connected. Now let me take you into the studio to show how that works in a little bit detail. It's because we're going to show the lab environment, and I want you to understand how it all connects. So I'm here in the studio, and this is one of the projects that I'm getting ready to do another video on. It's another mini server I built. It's for virtualization, but what I do to simulate my lab environment, and because this is actually going to be an install for my house, I needed to have a couple network cards set up in it, and I needed one to be external and one to be internal to the network. So we have 2 network cables here, and that's all I really need for the lab, so we can test things here in it. Well, in the studio, there's 2 ports down below, 2 standard, RJ45 wall jacks. One's labeled studio top, one's labeled studio bottom. So I know which cable's plugged into the top, one's plugged into the bottom, and they map to the UniFi. Now what we're going to show you here is, once we get into the software, is how I just switch those ports around and create the different network environments I do, so I can create segmented networks. Because another new test I have to do, I've done this and they've updated the software, so I got to do a new test. I can just take these 2 ports and take this edge router, for example, and because I want to test it routed, which there was some contested debate of whether or not I was actually routing. Trust me, I know how to route, and I was routing for sure. What we do is put one on one side of the network, one on the other. And because my computer is also plugged in to that UniFi switch, I can move my computer via the VLANs to the different segmented networks. So I can put myself on the WAN side or the LAN side, and I'm kind of lazy sometimes, I guess. I don't want to get up and physically move cables around. So I plug things here in the studio. I plug in which cable's which. I make a mental note of where I plugged into, and then I assign the VLANs to create the segmented networks, and I can place my computer for speed testing, for example, on each side of the network really easily. And that's what we're going to cover, is actually how I do this on the software level. So now you kind of get an idea of physically how it is. A couple wires here, a couple things here. So when you see me do the switch reviews and everything else, it's a really simple setup. I like the products to be here in the studio because it's easy for me with all. We've actually designed this with a whole lot of lights in here, so this is not even any added lights, and it makes everything easy to see. And then I just have to plug in 2 network cables, and boom, I have a network. Or sometimes I've laid a switch here because I got just too many devices we want to simulate, or like the ones I mounted in a rack, because we have some of that stuff kind of laying around, so we're setting it up for clients all the time. All right, so let's jump into the software part now and put this away before I lose something. We've covered all the physical layers of the network. This is the behind the scenes on how those physical layers are tied together with the software. So I put this little map together for you guys, and it's showing the different networks that we have on there. So our internet's fed in from Comcast, and I have it Comcast at craptastic because it's a love-hate relationship we have with them, but they're the provider we have here. So we have the .2 network, which isn't really for the lab. This is where we keep some of our production machines. We put them on the .2 network. So I drew it because it's there and it's the other unmanaged switch. So pfSense feeds that switch directly because it's just there for our servers with certain rules that keep everyone except for exclusionaries who we want on there. It's just a separate network, but it is part of what I showed you, so it's in here. It's not really part of the lab, though. That's where the production stuff goes, is on the .2 network. Now, the .3 network is kind of our customer network and where the VLANs come. And I call it customer network because it's where, we plug in general computers that we may bring into the store, but it's also where we do a lot of our testing because it's easy to plug things in when I want to just plug and test a switch and whatnot. But then it has a few VLANs on there. And we're going to get into, after I run over this software part, we'll get into what I refer to as the practical part of how actually this is set up. So this is the overview here. It starts out with this coming out of the pfSense. So the orange represents the physical connection out of the pfSense, one single network cable that carries the .3 network and VLANs over to the UniFi 8-port switch. Part of the reason we do this is because we have computers coming in that we're working on and, just general, as I refer to as retail computer work. It provides an easy network for testing when we want to load something up. It's easy to do some basic testing, but we want to do a lot of testing. We want to connect a lot of devices to it so we actually see how it performs, not with a single device, but with multiple devices. That's why we keep that network like that. But I also need to do routing and do some of the speed tests for different routers and firewalls and VPNs. So we have to have some routing going on in there. And it becomes very easy with VLANs. When it comes into the UniFi 8-port switch, it has these two VLANs. This VLAN is defined in pfSense. This one is not defined in pfSense. And I'll show you why in just a second. pfSense provides networking for the 192.168 network, and it provides networking for what I refer to as VLAN 69 to 172.16.69. And then VLAN 10 is just defined in the UniFi so we can create virtual installs of firewalls to do further testing. Now, when it comes out of the pfSense, this orange represents it going into the UniFi 8 port. And each port that comes out of there also can be tagged with the VLANs. So the VLANs are tagged and come out of here, and we'll show you how that works inside of the UniFi software. So the VLANs come out of there and go into the backup server. That's generally not on, it's just a spare. Then our main server. But once it hits the dumb switches, it changes to purple. And the reason for that is once you pass a VLAN through a unmanaged switch, or dumb switches, I just referred to them, you lose the VLAN, so it just becomes a .3 network. So everything in this part here is what you physically see in the rack, and then this just distributes throughout the office. We have a couple more dumb switches, so you have a dumb switch there, two more here, because there's a bunch of computers in our essentially computer repair area, and all the ports go in there. Now all those computers just fall on this .3 network for the office, except for the UniFi AP. It's plugged directly into the UniFi 8-port switch. And the reason for that is so I can easily create another access point VLAN. So I can create an SSID, have its own VLAN, and tie it to different networking for different testing purposes if need be. But it also keeps the .3 network on there. So if I need to just keep things there, easy enough to do. Now, also coming out of the UniFi 8-port, it goes to my computer. It goes to the studio with two different network connections. So that's why I showed you in the studio, the two network connections we have in there, each represent a port on the UniFi 8. That allows me to create different networks so I can actually use those two ports to do a WAN and a LAN on a device that comes in. And I usually use this as the WAN and this as the LAN, because that's what creates the definition of it, is either a virtual machine or a physical machine, and I tag it to VLAN 10, and then I can create a series of VLAN 10 networks. Now let's get into a little bit more how this works on a more virtual side. So here is the virtual servers. This just represents things running on the Xen server. So here's a test lab pfSense, a test Linux server. We have the LAN of Xen, which is a LAN that only exists in the Xen server, does not go outside the network. This box here essentially represents the UniFi 8-port switch. So you have the virtual servers. If I create a network and tie it to the LAN of Xen, this will pick up an IP address from the pfSense, and I can create like a virtual network inside of there. Or if I use the WAN side on the pfSense as VLAN 69 and the LAN side as VLAN 10, VLAN 10 is defined in a switch, it can go outside of here and distribute to other networks. So I can actually build a test pfSense box virtually, tag it the LAN side to VLAN 10, and it can go out to the studio or my computer, and I can switch my computer to that IP address and route through whatever I design inside of my lab. This is kind of essential for doing the lab, because if I want to do a speed test, I want to know how it looks when it's surfing the net, and I can surf the net through this system. And if I create more virtual servers inside of Xen, I just tag them all onto VLAN 10, and that means they pick up an IP address from this, because that's where it was tagged to. And this is being fed from the outside. It's feeding, this is our actual pfSense box, and it feeds the VLAN 69. And the reason, once again, that I do not have VLAN 10 inside of pfSense is I don't want pfSense, our physical server, to have any influence over the routing of it, because I want to create its own gateways, ARPs, everything contained in VLAN 10, so it's its own separate network. That way everything is self-contained and the test doesn't get, so to speak, contaminated. I don't want multiple gateways in there and anything like that. So nothing is defined on this until we define it over here. Or in other cases, we have defined it with the studio by plugging it into the LAN side on the studio, and once you define this in the UniFi switch that port is VLAN 10, it doesn't matter. I can test even an old, unmanaged, really old Linksys router. And because I'm doing it at the port level, it thinks it's plugged into a port that is part of a different network. So let's get into how this actually works, because this is where it gets a little bit interesting. So here's the VLAN on the pfSense, referred to as VLAN 69. I'm going to do a separate tutorial to get more in detail of how you set this up. So a few people have asked, but it's really easy, but I guess I should probably do a demonstration. So you pick the parent interface, pick the VLAN tag, like this. There's the interface of LAN, VLAN tag 69. I called it VLAN 69, and we go to interfaces, VLAN 69, static, set the IP address of it, then that's it. It now adds that to there. Now, like I said, there's two VLANs defined. There's VLAN 69 and then there's VLAN 10. So here's VLAN 10 and VLAN 69. When you create these inside of the UniFi software, it's pretty straightforward. You go here and you just create the VLAN. Give it an ID, give it a name. So you give it an ID as in a VLAN tag, the number, and then you give it a name. Like I said, I'm going to do a separate tutorial maybe more in depth of how that works, but this also will show you how that works. So you have VLAN 10, VLAN 69, and VLAN 69 connects to the pfSense. This one just exists. So we can tag traffic to that VLAN, and let me show you how the routing works on that, or at least how we push it through the ports. So this, and I'm going to start at devices to show you where I got this, the 8-port switch in rack. I just do this and undock it because I think it's easier, and it's kind of cool the way the UniFi software makes it float. And we're going to look at the ports. So right now, and here's the different ones. This is tagged to VLAN 69, but it's not plugged in. There's the studio conference room bottom port, studio conference room top port. Not real creatively named, but I like them easily named. Now, here is the XenServer, which has all profiles. I'm going to get to these profiles here in a second. The backup Xen server, all profiles. Tom's computer, all profiles. Uplink to 24 port. Studio Conference, VLAN 69, and LTSA all. Now, this is the uplink that I was talking about to the dumb switch. I only have the LAN traffic, as in the 192.168.3 traffic. It's restricted to that. But if we wanted to move my computer to another network, that's where this is kind of cool. So here's our uplink, which gets all. And I say, okay, right now I want to put my computer on another network. So we're going to go over here. And you can see my computer is on 192.168.3.9. So that's my IP address on this network. So real quick, we're going to switch it. So we go over here to Tom's computer. I know it's going to break a couple things, but no big deal. We're going to put me on VLAN 69. We're going to hit apply. And we see it provisioning, and I'm actually going to lose connection for a second here, because it's actually changing my computer's connection on the network. All right, change is complete. And now my computer has 172.16.69. It's still set to DHCP, and I'm on a separate network. And I have to reload this page real quick because it's going to fail, because it came from a different IP address. So all I do is refresh the page, and you can see that my computer is now on VLAN 69. So that's how we change ports back and forth to move the different objects here, well, different ports over to like the studio and that, so I can create these virtual networks and put my computer on there, because this is where I sit and do the videos and testing like I am now. So I'm actually going to put my computer back on the LAN. And I actually set it to all, that way if there's anything I want to jump around on my computer or even tie virtual machine to for other things, I can easily do that by having everything right here. And I want all the VLAN ports coming to my computer. So it's going to take a second to change again. It's going to provision it, and then I'm back on the .3 network. You know, and here I am. It only takes a few seconds, and I'm back on the 192.168.3 network. So that's how I move things around in my virtual lab with one basic 8-port switch. And the page is stuck because of my IP address changing. I just refresh and it's connected, and you can see everything's back to the way it was. Now, let's dive into how this works inside of XenServer, which is my preferred virtual lab software. XenServer is free, it's open source, it's a great thing. I've got an entire detailed tutorial on how to set it all up. And we're going to go objects by tag. Oh, I got to reconnect. Changing it made it not connect. There we go. Here is a pfSense lab machine, and this is where we use the .10 network for. So we're going to go over here to networking and show you what it's connected to. The WAN side is connected to .3 network to get internet. The other side is connected to VLAN 10, so we get to define the networking on there. So when we look at the console, we can see that the first network card is getting DHCP 192.168.3. The other one is 192.168.40.1/24. So it's at the .40 network. And I'll bring that over. Here's what it looks like logged in. You can see the same IP addresses here. I'm logged into it because I have a firewall rule that lets me access it externally. Because you can see here, I'm accessing it from the external address. So this was how I build these servers virtually inside of here. And now we're going to show how we network something behind this to kind of give you an idea of how it works. So I'm going to move this out of the way. That was just saying that my turn down server was off. We have a backup XenServer. It's not on right now. So here we have a Debian machine on VLAN 10. It got its IP address 192.168.40.50. And if we go over back to the pfSense box, we go to the services, DHCP server. We can see I actually had it signed static, but right there it is. It's assigned the address, and I can see it from there. We can ping it from the pfSense. It's on the pfSense network. Now for my computer, because we don't have a route to that, I'm on the .3 network. I cannot ping that. Doesn't go anywhere. So you can see they're separated networks, but they're physically plugged into the same switch. This is what the VLANs do, is create these separations so I can do all of this network testing in a virtualized environment. I can do it without getting up out of my seat too, which is actually kind of fun. And let's show you how quickly we can change an IP address for this. So all we have to do if we want is go here and hit the pull down. There's VLAN 10. If I wanted this to be on VLAN 69, I just hit it. But let's do something a little bit different here first. Because this is a question that seems to come up of, yeah, you can do that, but you're doing inaccurate speed tests. Fair enough. I like the challenge here. So we're going to run iperf 3-s for server. Now, remember, I can't ping this, so it's definitely behind the firewall. It is a separate network. I'm on the 192.168.3.9. Actually, I'll pull that up real quick. So right here's my computer, 192.168.3.9. Clear. iperf 3-s for server, and it's listening right now. I have to move it out of the way. I can't really do it all at the same time, but I'll pull it over real quick so you can see. And this, I was already doing some testing to confirm this, but we'll go iperf 3. Now here's my IP address, and show you just to make sure you understand. This is on the .40 network, which means it's routing through this pfSense lab box right here, which is producing .40. So we created VLAN 10. VLAN 10 has the LAN side of this inside of the pfSense. Then it goes in this virtual LAN over here, to this box, and now we're going to connect to my box and do a speed test to see just how fast it is connected this way. Dash client 192.168.3.9. Let's see what kind of speed we get, and you can see it right here. So it's done about 935 megabits a second. Same thing here. This is the other side. This is my side, the receiving side, because I'm running it on my computer. So you can see it's all working. We transferred that much data across. And I'm going to run the test one more time. And you can see it here. Here's the data peeking out inside of this pfSense that is running on 98. So that was our speed test, and now we're going to talk about the results. So 933, we're seeing pretty consistent. That's routed through this. So let's put this on a different network. So networking, properties, they creatively named .3 network. Hit OK. All right, it switched networks. I'm on the .3 network. It actually has an IP address of 192.168.3.133. Just up arrow twice to do the same test again. Let's see if we get a different speed result. So we had 933, 936, the sender receiver for transferred through the routed network, through the virtual system. Now this is going IP direct. We're going right out of the IP here and over to my system. And we see roughly the same results. Actually, it seems to be slightly slower. That could be also because I'm transferring data back and forth on my system. So that's a really slight, less than 1% variance doing it routed versus not routed. So we'll run the test again to see if we get a different result. But you're seeing here that it operates at full speed even though it's in a VLAN, which is really convenient for some of the virtual labs when you want to do these testing and make sure everything works. Now, I will point out something about pfSense when you run it in XenServer. I've found out that because it doesn't support some features, if you're in the networking part, you have to take hardware checksum offloading and disable hardware checksum offloading. What that does is allow some of the hardware checksums to go and be offloaded to the interface card. Now you have to disable this with some of the other Intel network, non-Intel network cards, or ones that are dubious compatibility with pfSense, or more specifically compatibility with FreeBSD. I generally recommend, if you're going to build a pfSense box for production, buy the Intel cards. They're not that expensive to get, and they work great here without any hiccups or trouble or mystery problems. But if you want to run it virtually, it runs fast. It runs at full gigabit speed. You just have to disable this because the XenServer will handle it for you. You don't have to worry about this hardware checksum offloading. But if you don't have it checked, I found some much lower speed results on there. So that could be where some people had some problems with how that works. So that kind of gives you an idea how the virtual lab works, and we'll go back over here to networking, and we'll change it again just to show you that the VLANs from externally can be pulled right in here as well. So we're going to go properties, and we're going to go VLAN 69. Oops. Hit OK. Console. And now we've flipped it over to this network. It's really simple once you have these labs set up. And I've got an entire tutorial how to put XenServer together, how all of this works. And this gives you lots of flexibility. So I can sit here from my desk, move machines around. And as you can see, this is like from another video I did. I had a couple VPN server and clients to set up in Debian. It made it very easy because I just popped them each on their own networks and away we went. You can do it right from here, and I can troubleshoot and solve problems. And there's not really a speed test because some people say, oh, no, you can't do it that fast if you do it this way. It works fine. It's full gigabit speed, even if it's on here. Now, the last piece we'll show is we'll mess around here with the pfSense labs. I mentioned the LAN of Xen, and what that is here is being able to swap this out for a different network that only exists inside of here, so it never even leaves the switch. So the way you do that is we're going to go over to console. Now, one thing about pfSense, I imagine I could load the Xen tools, but because I didn't, it won't let me change a network on the fly. I actually got to stop, halt, and restart the system, so we're going to halt it real quick. Whoops. Now it's halted. We go to properties. And I call it LAN of Xen because it's only exclusively on the Xen server. And this is kind of a neat feature of Xen servers. You can create networks defined that are only within it, and you don't need to create VLANs. So I can create as many of these as I want. I have a whole tutorial on how to do networking inside of Xen Center. So we're going to go here, Tom's LAN of Xen, hit OK. Then we're going to go back up and start this virtual machine again. I'll wait till it gets started up. So I left the WAN the same as on the .3 network, but now this is pushed to the LAN of Xen, which is the exclusive network for this machine. Now this has the XenServer tools installed, so I can go here to networking and not have to reboot and just plug in a different network. So we're going to go LAN of Xen, hit OK. It's going to take a second to push it. Console. And it's still getting the .40 address. Works the same. Now this works in Windows as well. I have a Windows 10 machine, and I see another one. I'm sure one of my staff is named We're Gonna Wreck It. This is how we do the same testing inside of here for Windows or that. And we right now actually have this running. We have a couple videos I want to do with Server 2 2016. So we just set up an eval because it's a demo machine that'll be destroyed when it's done. And this is where having a lab is really handy for this, because if I wanted to fork this, and like he forked this one here, if I wanted to fork it, we can just say copy VM. We're going to go within pool, and we leave it at fast clone. So it copies some Windows 10 thing we're going to do. Finish. And now I have yet another virtual machine. And because I copied it, all the parameters from this one stay the same. And when I'm done, I can just destroy it and hit delete VM. Delete, and away you go. The same thing goes for when I want to clone these. I can, we'll shut this down. I prefer to do it shut down, but you don't have to. There's ways it works both ways, but generally shutting them down so I know there's nothing in some data in flight state. And if I want to copy the VM, we'll just let it call it copy. And now I have another Debian box that I can quickly deploy. I generally leave this one here so I can do it. Now the other thing we have is how the snapshots work, and this is also how I do the demos. With my FreeNAS test server, I keep a snapshot of it. So whatever I'm doing, this is my fresh load part versus now. And this lets me revert quickly back to it. They have this kind of cool tree view that forks out so you can create different snapshots from different times. It's neat, and I've demoed that in my more in-depth one. I like it like this. I have a more in-depth video on, as I said, on Citrix Xen Server, which I'll leave in the comments in the description below, so you can watch that video. So it gives you the whole picture on how that works. But it's really simple. This lets me revert back to this. So when I do my testing, I build it all out, do the video. Maybe I keep it for a little while, maybe I don't, but instead of having to reload FreeNAS each time I want to do a test, I just do it that way. Now, running FreeNAS virtualized, because people ask this, can I? Yes, it works fine, but you're not getting advantage of ZFS to its full power, because ZFS works best when it works directly on top of the hardware layer, so it's interacting direct with the drive. So yes, you can virtualize it. Yes, virtualizing pfSense, on the other hand, works fine. Matter of fact, it's kind of nice because I have the same things here. I can create easy snapshots to do my demonstrations. Like this is the pfSense Lab basin before VPN setup. This was the one I recently used for my VPN demos. So after I do one demo, I just hit revert back to that and roll it back, do another demo. When I had to create these, you can actually clone from this. So you can actually take a snapshot or take here, new VM. So even though right now I have a VM running that is with all that stuff set up, and a VPN I know is still loaded on there and some of the configuration, if I go, you know what, I want another pfSense box, you can still do it from here. I can actually create a new VM from previous snapshots. That also makes XenServer really flexible. And you can see how quickly I can build out my lab environment and create these scenarios. This is really key to getting my workflow and getting things done, is having this server and doing some of the testing. But I was going to give you an overview of my virtual lab setup and how it works. If there's questions, comments, or something I need to cover more in depth, sometimes the comments and suggestions I get from you is what makes better videos so I can, I'll create that. You're like, oh, I didn't understand this part, or I should do this. I am going to do probably one on some of the virtual networking in terms of VLANs and how they work with pfSense. But hopefully this was helpful and kind of give a big overview of how our lab and some of the testing works. If you like the content here, like and subscribe, and thank you again for watching.